So let's talk about crafting in the heat. So hello and welcome to Ewe Sew You. My name's Zoe and this is my channel all about the crafting bits and pieces I get up to. I knit, I sew, I spin on a spindle, I dabble in weaving from time to time, and anything else that takes my crafty fancy. But today we're going to be thinking about how to cope when the weather turns warm. If you follow any other Brit anywhere on social media, you're probably aware that we've had a few days of it's flipping hot, which came right on the heels of it's flipping cold. Now this is normal for UK weather, but as you're probably aware, unlike in countries that get more consistent heat, more regular heat for longer periods of time, we don't have air conditioning as standard in our houses or buildings. So when the mercury rises in such a wet country, it gets very muggy very quickly and really rather unpleasant. So I thought I'd take advantage of the weather for this week's video and talk a little bit about what I do to keep my cool whilst I'm working on my projects. That being said, the weather has cooled down considerably today, so should get a few days of relief before it turns hot again. Hot for me, by the way, is mid-20s C. I am built more for spring and summer when it's more like 18 to 20 degrees C. And no, America, I don't do Fahrenheit. If I can work it out, I'll put it on the screen. But most of you are pretty good at doing the conversion. So, what do? First things first, you want to try and keep the heat out of your house. British homes are built to retain heat. So once it comes in, the house is not very keen on letting it out. So, for instance, I have two big glass panes on the south-facing wall of my house. It's a sliding door into the garden. So it's lovely. We get to see the garden all year round. It's billowing in the breeze at the moment. It's currently, I think it's about 7. Half 6. So it's half 6 in the evening. So we're not anywhere near sun going down just yet because it's middle of June, end of June. But yeah, we get a nice little view out into our garden, get to watch the birds floating around and all that sort of thing. But when it's going to be warm, when we know it's going to be warm, we close the curtains once the sun starts coming around. So I'll get up in the morning around 7:30, 8 o'clock usually, and if I know it's going to be warm, crack the door open a little bit to get some fresh air in. And then, yeah, as the sun starts coming around into the garden, shut the door, shut the curtains, keep the heat out. The craft room, which is north facing, has blackout curtains and they're brilliant for keeping out the heat. So they're shut at the moment as well, so that room stays relatively cool until I'm actually working in there, because it heats up quite quickly with the iron. One of the joys of sewing. So that's the first thing that we do to try and keep the heat out. The next thing we do is we think about how to cool the air that's already in the house down. Now, we have different situations in different rooms. So in the living room and the bedroom, we have, in each of those, a Black & Decker air conditioning unit on wheels, and it's brilliant. It wasn't hugely, they weren't not hugely expensive. We've got 2 of them, so they're affordable enough for us to get 2. We usually only use level 1, but it has a cooling feature on it, so we can use it just blowing air around if the air's just a bit too still and we just want to get a bit of movement to relieve some of the muckiness, or we can put water and ice blocks in and that cools the air down as it passes through the unit. So that's great when it gets to sort of upper 20s and into the 30 degrees, which it sometimes does. Last year before, we hit 40, 41. That was pleasant. So they're really effective. And like I said, they were not hugely expensive. I can't remember what they were, but we got the pair of them for, I think, under £100. So they were a really good investment. The craft room, I have a slightly different setup because the craft room is so small, and my other half games in the bedroom, which is partly why we have such a decent unit in there, because it's not just overnight that we have it on. He uses it when he's gaming. But the craft room, a lot smaller, so curtains shut, and I have a little USB fan that plugs into my laptop and is powered by the laptop. So I position that on, I've got a riser for my laptop, and I've got a wireless keyboard so that when I'm using the craft room as an office, I've got the laptop at a good height for my eyes, so more ergonomic. But that's got a little platform that sticks off the side. So I have used wonder clips to attach this little fan by its base to the stand, because otherwise as it works, it just sort of rolls itself off the edge of the platform. So the wonder clips hold it in place, plug it into the laptop, and I have that positioned so that it's blowing into my face as I am sewing. So that starts to combat the heat from the iron, which is directly to my right when I'm sewing. The room does get very warm very quickly when I'm working in there. If my other half is not gaming upstairs, if he's gaming downstairs, or if he's otherwise engaged, I do sometimes borrow the unit from the bedroom and have that sitting behind me. We used to have the big round fans on stands, and I'd position one of those behind me if he wasn't using it. So I'd have cross breeze going. So that works quite well. The other thing that I make sure that I do is I break down my sewing projects. So knitting and crochet, if I'm sitting in the living room watching YouTube or a film or whatever, I've got the big good unit in front of me and I've got no iron on, adding heat to the room. When I'm sewing, however, the iron is obviously adding heat to the room, and it's a bit more complicated. So I'll break the projects down and I'll take more frequent breaks whilst I'm sewing. So whereas in cold weather I might get a full top done in one go, particularly like t-shirts, that kind of thing, or the skirt of a dress might get put together in one go, or the bodice of a dress might get put together in one go before I take a break. In hot weather, I'll take more frequent breaks, and I drink more fluids. It's partly my other half. He will quite regularly just turn up with a cold drink, or he'll bring up my water bottle, having refreshed it with ice water for me, and put it next to me as I'm sewing, so that I'm making sure that I keep my fluids up, because even without the steroids, I wasn't exactly a sweat-free person. So hydration is important when it's warm. So that's how I cope with hot weather and crafting. The other thing to think about as well with particularly knitting and crochet is, what are you working on? Is it going to be big and heavy and sitting in your lap keeping that warm? Or is it something small and light? So yeah, small projects for knitting and crochet are always going to be good. And sewing projects that you can break down into little chunks are going to be good. So that you do get those stages of respite, as it were. So if you have any additional tips on how to keep your cool while crafting in hot weather, do put them in the comments down below. And thank you so much for spending some time with me this week. I look forward to seeing you in my next video. In the meantime, there's this video up here that may be of interest to you, and I will see you soon. But until then, happy crafting and bye-bye for now.